Hello, and welcome to Week 3, Unit 3 of Application Development for SAP Business by Design. In this unit, we'll be looking at fine-tuning UIs. Basically, how do we clean them up and adjust them so we have a better user experience. What we'll go through now is we'll go back into the UI Designer and we'll look at a few different things. One thing is that we'll go ahead and correct some text that's there and some headings. So we have meaningful headings and clean, proper text. We'll make sure that we add an object value selector, a search help. That way we can select an employee to assign to a particular bonus plan. We'll also go ahead and look at displaying data from associations. So how can we incorporate data from other objects to make our screen more user-friendly without copying that data. So let's go ahead and jump back into the UI Designer. So I have my bonus plan, quick activity floor plan open here. I'm going to go ahead and go into edit mode since I'm in display mode. And we're going to go ahead and do a few things here. So one thing is at the header, I'm going to go ahead and select that. I see that it says bonus plan ID and or description. So basically it's kind of saying, hey, you know what, you might want to show some other info about this particular bonus plan so when it's selected somebody can see a brief idea of what it is at the top. So as I select that, I'm going to use the properties view on the right hand side and go ahead and click on this field and press the little arrow button. It's going to give me a chance to edit this. And so I could put some specific text in here, some static text for example, but that's not really going to be helpful for me. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say advanced. And it's going to now make a little list here that I can start making changes in. I'm going to go ahead and delete this helper text. I don't need that. Bonus plan, I'd like to have a space in there. Let's go ahead and add the space. And then I'm going to add a new row. Now in this row, I want to have some dynamic data. I want to actually show my ID. I'm going to use this button on the right, and it's going to show me the data model of my floor plan. Now if you remember from before, this data model is already there for us. It shows all the data from our bonus plan, and it was provided to us when we generated the screen itself. I can see here's my bonus plan ID, and that's what I want to show. I'm going to go ahead and select that. I know it's okay, it's bound, and if I went to check, I could make sure that it's bound to the right field. And now it shows me a path to my data model to this field, and I can say okay. So now my header looks a little bit better. I see bonus plan, colon, and then a placeholder. So ideally now when the viewer views this quick activity floor plan, they'll see the ID of the bonus plan at the top. That way they can know directly what that field is. Let's look at our calculate bonus button next. If I can see there's no space in there, I want to make sure I have a space in that. You can see here on the properties it's changed again. I have button. It has an action specifically on there. If I open up this action, I can view that. And I see that it's a BO action and it has my calculate bonus selected and is bound to that. So now when somebody clicks on this button, it should call the calculate bonus action for us. I wanted to change that text, so I'm going to go ahead and go down to the bottom here to text for the button. And again, click on this arrow, and here I don't really need any kind of dynamic text. I just wanted to make sure I put a space in there so it's a little bit cleaner for the user. So I'm going to add the space and say OK. Now, since our object is really basic right now, there's not a lot to it, I really don't necessarily need the OIF. I can pretty much see all the data I need to within the QAF. So I may want the View All button later on. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and select it, and for now we'll go ahead and hide it. So I'm going to use the visible property, and instead of true, I'm going to set that to false. Now when the user views the QAF, they won't see the View All option, and we'll just skip going to the OIF altogether. As I look down some other things, I can see root node elements here. That's not really so clean. I don't really need people to care if it's root node elements. Maybe I just look at that and I say field group header, and I'm actually just going to say false and say to this show header property. So now it won't even show the header in the screen. I don't really have a lot of sections, so I don't really need a header in this area. If I wanted to, I could say header or general info or whatever I might want to call this section. But for now, since it's just one, I'm going to leave it without a header there. Otherwise, a lot of this looks good. One thing you'll notice here is that a lot of these are input fields, even our date fields. And some of these, it will know at runtime what the actual field is. So for dates, for example, it's at design time an input field, but when we run it in real time, it'll actually have a date picker that's available. So the framework will render that for us because it knows the data type is a date and the input field is sufficient enough for the framework to be able to render that. Some other things, this all looks okay. My target amount is there. Total revenue and total bonus. These two we're actually calculating in our scripting, right? The revenue is how much the sales order had, and the bonus is how much the bonus is going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to make these read-only. I'm going to open up, since these are compound fields, they'll have a list of fields within them. And I can see in the properties view this included fields property. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I see my content and my currency code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make both of these read-only. The content is the actual attribute of the data type that stores the data, and the currency code is what stores the currency. So read-only, set that to true as well. Okay, so those are both read-only. Let's do the same for bonus. And I'll go to my columns and make this read-only. There we go. And make our currency code read-only as well. Perfect. So now those are read-only. They'll just be there for display when someone sees them. This is consistent flag. Now, I could either leave this out or leave it in. I'm going to say let's leave it in, but I'm also going to want this to be read-only. I want people to know if something is consistent or not. It's up to them. And I'm going to make the space here in front of is consistent. Now, since every time they save the object, it'll inherently be consistent because we've enforced that. At least this way they can have another visual indicator, maybe to reference if the sales or the bonus plan is actually consistent or not. So all of this looks pretty good now, except for this last field, employee ID. This is an actual employee that we'll want to enter in. And although this is great that we have a field that we can put it in, it's not very helpful, as I would have to know the actual ID of an employee and manually enter it in right now. But I don't want to force my users to do that. So let's do a couple things. One, let's go ahead and change the text. And I'm actually just going to change it, say override it and say employee. I don't necessarily need ID there. I think employee for me will be fine. And I'm going to change the display type of the field from input field to object value selector. And if you remember from before, an object value selector in OVS is a search help. And I'm going to want to be able to provide the employee search help that's available. Now, I obviously haven't built an employee search help yet, but there's a lot of predefined ones that are available to us. Really quick, if I go back to the studio here, and let's go up to View and Repository Explorer, there is a tab up here called Reuse UIs. And this will talk about all the UIs that are available to be reused in multiple floor plans. Now we're interested specifically in the object value selector, so I could open this up and I could come and look to see if there's an employee one here, something that's relevant for me. I see a couple. There's an employee OVS, and it gives me the path of where that is. And there's also employee ID, and gives me also another path to a different OVS. Now I could go into the UI designer and look at these different ones and see if one helps me out versus the other. In the OVS selection screen, now that I changed this to OVS in the UI designer, if I go to the bottom, it wants to know what's the OVS component, the actual UI component that I want to use. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I could browse through the folders here and see which one is it that I want. And you'll notice it's the same look as the Configuration Explorer tab. And that path that we saw in the Repository Explorer, it's the same path that would be in this folder structure. But since I want to use something that's already existing and it's likely public, I can use this Public OVS button, and it'll show me a list of OVSs that are already available for me to use within my application. Same that I see in the Repository Explorer. So I can see a couple here, and I could see, well, do I want the party ID or the employee ID one? For now, I'm going to go ahead and say the employee ID. And it's going to go ahead and populate it here. You'll notice with this OVS that it has some different parameters in here, or imports it says. And this is actually how we can filter the search of this OVS. So this is already configured to say that, well, if you have a first name or a last name, maybe a company, reporting line unit, you can actually bring those into your search and provide some values to it based on data model that's in your floor plan. So then when a user opens up this search help, it'll restrict it based on what you've specified here. For us, we don't really need anything. I'm just going to select the basic search that's there and say OK. So now I've given a search help to this field. This will not only give the little search help when I click on this button here, but it also provide that type ahead search help. So if somebody starts typing in the field and it gives it a second, it'll start providing search help options below that text box. So for me, I think this is okay. I'm happy with this for my quick activity floor plan. I'm going to go ahead and save and activate these changes. And now I have my floor plan that was already usable, but now it's even more usable. It's better for any user using it. They have a nice search help. It looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit better display of info. And so it's a little bit nicer for the actual end user that we want. So that's how we can fine-tune floor plans. We're basically using the properties and adjusting different things. If I wanted to add another button, I could always actually even use the toolbar view, and it shows me all the different options that are available to me, and I could say, well, let me go ahead and add in a button here, and then I could bind that button to a new action, or maybe I have another advanced list pane I want to show of some items. So we can see all this different info and enhance the screen whatever way we want using the UI designer. So we were able to clean up the text within our UI. We saw a few that we thought could have used some good improvements, some spaces, providing an ID dynamically based on whatever the user is viewing. We were able to improve the usability through the OVS that's there. And actually one thing we still could do is show data from another business object. Let's actually jump back to the UI designer. This is a good point to add. I've shown this field, I've added the OVS, but I want to add this one more thing actually, and that's I want to show data from the actual employee association. Now if you remember, we provided an association, our business object, and I can use this field to not only provide input for the user, but to pull that data out. And I'm going to use that using this text data property here. First, let's go to our data model. Now, if I look here on the business object on the right, I can see there's the two employee association that I defined. And in here, if I open this up, I can see the structure of the actual employee business object. And what I'm going to do is, let's go to current common and business partner formatted name. I'm actually going to click and drag this in to my data model, my floor plan. I can see it's here now. If I select it, it shows that it's highlighted on the right. And if I go back to my designer tab, let's select our employee field. And for this text field, let's go ahead and do some binding to that business partner formatted name. Now what this enables us is that the user can enter in an ID, and what will happen is that after they select something from the search help or from the help provided in the type ahead, it'll call the after modify of our object. And if you remember in the after modify, let's go back to it real quick, is that we're doing a check on the employee to see if it's set. And this employee ID is that field that we actually have in the UI. So as soon as somebody enters a valid employee ID, this should actually set the association for us, this code here. So once it does that, it'll actually go, and once that association set, get the formatted name of this employee and actually show that as the value here. So even though the input for this is the ID, the display value is the name of the employee. So if I was to go ahead and delete whatever's in here, highlight it, say delete, and hit again, I could actually enforce it so that it clears that out as well. But it's always going to show the actual business partner formatted name. And remember, we didn't copy that from the employee. We utilized the association to do that. So that was the last thing that we were able to do as well, is show other data from another business object that's not directly into ours by utilizing that association. So this is how we can fine-tune our UIs. We'll do a little bit more throughout the course as we make different changes. But in the next unit, we will look at extensibility and specifically extending. Actually, in the next unit, we will be testing this screen. We want to go ahead and test first, and then we'll look at extensibility. So with that, thank you very much.